Hello there. I don't usually do videos with my online rapid games unless I play them live, but this time I want to show you this game because it has some very interesting endgame motives and some of things I encountered for the first time in my real games, so I think it will be interesting for you as it definitely was very interesting for me to play and to analyze. So let's go to the game immediately. I was playing this opponent who is much stronger than me by rating. You can see that he has 1923. I'm still under 1900. I did make some progress, so maybe you remember the video I recorded once I finally got past this 1800 mark, and now I'm 1865. Even more after this game. So, but anyway, it was a stronger opponent, and at the moment when I was playing him, I didn't know how strong he was because I started to play using this Zen mod on Lichess, and when you turn on the Zen mod, then you don't see anything from your opponent. You don't see chat, you don't see moves, you don't see his name, his rating, nothing. And I realized that it is beneficial for me not to know these details because I tend to be biased. So if the opponent is much lower rated, then I got too relaxed and I think, okay, I will just win this game. And if he's much higher rated, then I got discouraged and afraid to make some strong moves. So it's better for me not to know about the rating of the opponent. So my opponent played d4. I will go through this opening a middle game rather fast because I want to get to the end game. So I responded d5, knight f3, knight f6, e3 from his part, and here I played c5. So he's playing some kind of Colle system, and against Colle in London I like to play early c5. My opponent played c3, so he went for the Colle system. I played bishop f5, and this is actually a mistake because now he can just take my pawn and I cannot easily regain my pawn. So maybe e6 was a better move here. Although this is not bad, even if he takes pawn, even if I cannot retain my pawn, I get some good compensation for his ruined structure, and I have control of the center and so on. Okay, bishop d3. I just exchange the bishops because as black in this kind of openings, my light square bishop will most likely not be the strongest piece of the board, so I'm happy to exchange it. Queen takes d3, e6 now, solidifying in the center. D takes c5 from his part. Now he's just helping me to develop my bishop, but I have to be careful because if I take this pawn, he can check me and make a double attack. So by checking me, he can superficially looking, he can win the bishop, but actually he cannot because I can play just knight d7, blocking the check and simultaneously defending the bishop. So I had to spend a little time calculating this. So bishop takes c5 is a safe move. Now he plays b4, trying to kick away my bishop. I just retreat my bishop to d7, so it is very active piece now. He now plays a3, so he's solidifying his queen side. I castle in this position. He plays knight b to d2, so he's developing his knight. I also develop my knight. So everything is pretty much equal. I have a little advantage here, so minus 0.4. So I stand better at this position, probably because I have a better control of the center. He castles now. And okay, computer says it's in inaccuracy. Now I have minus 1 advantage, but it's still not a winning advantage. Okay, maybe I have a slightly better position, but the play goes on. So the opening now is officially over, and I have to start making middle game plans. And you can see that he has a backward pawn, this c3 pawn. So when your opponent has a backward pawn, your strategy is to pile up on this pawn and to bring your heavy pieces on the semi-open file and maybe even try to exchange some minor pieces so that this pawn becomes weaker and weaker. So this is what I do. So I put rook to c8, so I'm now attacking this pawn, making pressure to this pawn. He's playing bishop b2, so he understands that this pawn is a weakness. He's immediately defending this. I play a knight to e5 here, so if he captures, I can recapture with my bishop and exert the extra pressure on this c3 pawn. He plays queen e2, so he didn't take, but he didn't take my knight, but he had to remove then his queen because it was attacked. Knight c4 now. Again, I'm now making my knight more active, and the idea is if he takes, then I can put my rook here, and then I can maybe double the rooks on the c file. And I'm also attacking his bishop, so this is a forcing move. He takes, knight takes c4, I take with my rook. So this was in accordance with my plan, for good or worse. Knight d2 now, he's attacking my rook. I have to retreat my rook. I retreat it to c6, so it's a light square. He cannot attack it with his diagonal bishop, and also I'm all the time dreaming of doubling rooks on the same open c file. My opponent plays c4 here, so very good move because he realizes that this is the liability in his position, and well, now he can play the c5, sorry, c4, because he has this square covered twice, and I also covered this twice, so it's a safe move. So he played now c4. Now he doesn't have the backward pawn weakness anymore. And I played queen c7, which was, well, the computer says mistake, I would say blunder, because this queen was guarding my knight, and now it doesn't. So he can take my knight, I have to take with my pawn, and then my king is exposed on the g file, and he can bring his queen to g file, and it will be very, very unpleasant for me. So when I played this queen c7 move, I had a twofold intention. One is to put my heavy pieces on the c file, and another one is to make this battery threat on h2. But I didn't see that another consequence of my move. It was well, the queen used to guard the knight. Now she doesn't. So he should have just took my knight here. But he didn't, luckily for me. He played c5. So he's attacking my bishop now, and he's, well, probably dreaming of using his queenside majority, pawn majority, to create a passed pawn in the endgame. But with this move, he didn't only miss the chance to grab my knight, but he also blundered his h2 pawn. So I took the h2 with check, he moved his king, and I retreated my bishop. You have to retreat your bishop in this situation, because he can just play g3 if you don't. If you play anything else, he can play g3, and then your bishop is captured. So you have to retreat this bishop. I retreated this to e5 now, offering the exchange, because his bishop is very, very strong, so I thought it will benefit me, and also after the exchange, which he accepted, I get to centralize my queen. He plays g3 in this position. I am not really sure why. I guess he was a little bit afraid of my queen and the knight very close to his king, and also when I move my queen, I can play something like e5 and bring my rook in the game. So I guess he was calculating some of my combinations here, and he played the g3 to stop some of my plans. Okay. I played knight to e4 here, so I'm now offering the exchange of knights, which will come with check. He declines the exchange and plays knight f3. And now I had this nice tactic which I missed, and this tactic is actually very often met in the tactics courses, books, and so on. So this would be just to take this knight with my queen. This will be to take this pawn with my queen, and after he captures, I get to fork his king and queen, and I get my queen back. So, like I said, this is tactics which is often met in the books, but not so easy to spot in the game, because you have to seriously consider sacrificing your queen for a pawn. Even though it's just a temporary, this move doesn't easily occur to you in the game. So you don't usually think about, okay, I can grab a pawn with my queen, although this pawn is protected by another pawn, and then think about continuation. So I don't think, sorry, so I don't think this move is easy to spot. So I missed this tactic. I play the queen h5 check. And now I'm also threatening, you can see that now his knight is pinned because his queen is unprotected here. So he has to play king g2, because otherwise I could win his knight. I played knight g5, so you can imagine if this king was here, for example, he would have problems with his position. He plays rook h1, now trying to kick away my queen, and now he avoided some tactics which includes attacking with queen and knight, and also with this rook later on. So I was thinking about this position. I didn't see how I can go on with the attack, so I think my attack is stopped at this moment. I am a pawn up, so I decided to went into endgame. So I exchanged the queens. Queen takes f3, queen takes f3, knight takes f3, king takes f3, so everything got exchanged. And now we are in the position to start a serious rook and pawns endgame. And this is a very, very complex endgame. I cannot even dream of understanding all aspects of this endgame, or to analyze every move in this endgame, because it will be very, very complex and probably beyond my chess understanding. But okay, I know some basic strategies. So you have to activate your rooks to create passed pawn, to push passed pawn, and so on. So I played b6 here, which computer says it's the move is okay. So the idea is maybe if this pawn got exchanged, I have the control of the only open file in the game. So this C file will be opened, and I will be the one in control. He doesn't allow for this. He plays rook h c1. I take the pawn, and now I was expecting that he will take either with his pawn, and then he will have these isolated pawns here, or he can take with this rook, and again he will have two isolated pawns. But he didn't. He decided to sacrifice the pawn. So now I'm 2 pawns up, and he pushed this pawn. And so he's probably he's hoping that he'll have this. He'll be able to create passed pawn, and this can be very dangerous, because if he creates passed pawn here, he has 2 rooks to back it up. His king can come to help. So I think his strategy was also decent. I had to move my rook away. He played a4, so he's advancing his pawns now. I played c4 here because you can see my pawn here is undefended. So I don't want this rook to spend eternity here just protecting this c pawn. So I pushed it c4, so this pawn is now nicely protected. He played rook av1, so he wants to push his pawn. I played rook to b7, trying to stop this idea. He now played e4, so he's trying to break my nice pawn chain in order to maybe attack and win my pawns. Rook c8 here, so the idea was to protect this pawn and to threaten to push the d pawn, even now or later in the game. Then I would have 2 connected pawns. He takes the pawn, he takes d5, he takes d5, I take back, and now he starts to activate his king. I'm trying to activate my king as well. King d4. Now this move is a very good move, and now my position is a little locked up, so I'm not sure what to do. So my pawn is attacked. I cannot create connected pawns here. I have to think about how to protect this pawn. It's not easy to bring my king in the game now, because I have to think about d5 pawn and so on. So I played rook d8, just defending my pawn. Here he played rook e1, so he's cutting away my king. I cannot now activate my king. Rook e7. So I offer the exchange of rooks. So I am 2 pawns up in this position. So I think it's okay to exchange my rooks, but it's not the only reason. The reason is that I want to activate my king. So I cannot play endgame without the king. So he plays a5. He keeps pushing his pawns. I take the rook here. He takes back, and I play rook b8. And now I'm threatening to take this pawn. So if he takes, for example, my d pawn, I can take with check, and if he takes this pawn, I can take this pawn, and I will have this passed pawn here. So we can exchange all these pawns, and I get with nice passed pawn, and also majority on the king side. But of course he doesn't go for that. He sees this, so he plays rook b1, and now I'm activating my king, giving away this d5 pawn. Because I am 2 pawns up, I have 1 pawn. I will be 1 pawn up even if when he takes this, and I can start to push my c pawn further. So I'm not sure if this was a good idea, but it was the best I saw at the moment. So he takes the pawn. I am pushing now my passed pawn. He plays queen c6. Now he wants to engage his king and his rooks in order to push these pawns, and this can be very dangerous. I played rook d8 here, so I wanted to activate my rook and to somehow try to push my pawn. He plays rook e1 check here, so he wants to cut away my king, and he succeeds because I don't have any choice. I have to move to the f file, but my king is now more active than it was on the 8th rank. b6 now from his part, so he wants to create passed pawn here, and this is now dangerous. But I always have a perpetual check here. I will show you this. So a takes b6, and now he has to take back, and he takes with his king. Curiously, I would always take with my with the pawn, because then I am closer to promotion. But okay, he took with his king here, and I played c2. So I'm now very close to promoting this pawn, and he blocks my pawn. And now the fun begins. I played rook b8 check, and he now has the chance just to get a draw by perpetual check. So if he moves his king, for example, here, I will just attack the pawn. He has to defend the pawn. I'll give check and so on, and we will have the draw. But he doesn't do this. He makes a huge blunder, and he plays king to a7. And now his king is in front of his rook pawn. I'm controlling the b file, so there is no way he can promote to this pawn anymore. So naturally I play rook b2, defending this pawn, and now you can see this, I'm cutting away his king. His king cannot move away, and the king will always be in front of this pawn. And now I think at this point he cannot hope for a win anymore. He can only fight for the draw using the Desperado Rook method, which I will show very soon. So he plays a6, so he wants to push his pawn to be ready to promote, and well, at this point everything is locked here. He cannot promote this pawn. This rook has to block the promotion. This rook has to guard this pawn. So everything on queen side is blocked. So I have to play on the king side. I have majority on the king side, and I have to create passed pawn. So if you want to create passed pawn, the strategy is first to push the candidate pawn. The candidate pawn is the pawn which is not blocked. So this pawn is the candidate pawn in this position. So I played h5. He continues to push his pawns on the king side. I play g5. He plays a7. So now he's just 1 point to promotion. So if this rook was ever to move away from the b file, he can bring out his king and promote. So my rook has to be here all the time. I played h5, so again pushing the candidate pawn, and now I will create passed pawn here on the king side. G takes h4, G takes h4, and now I have the passed pawn on the h file. What can he do now? Well, obviously he cannot win, but he can use this Desperado Rook method, but first he has to get rid of this f pawn. So for example, imagine that this pawn is gone of the board. So what can he do? He can just check me, and he can just try to force me to take his rook. So if this pawn is gone, if this rook is gone, then he's stalemated. So this is the motif. So he has to force me to take away this the two pieces he has, and then it will be stalemate. Or this pawn doesn't have to be taken, it could be just blocked somehow, that it cannot be moved, and then you sacrifice the rook by giving aggressive checks to the king, and once I take the rook, it's a stalemate. So this is called Desperado Rook, when you have the rook which can go wild on the board, make all sorts of threats, and you cannot take it because it will be stalemate, and but eventually it will be a draw anyway, because this rook will just go on forever on the board. So I played, he plays f4 here, so now he wants to sacrifice this pawn or to give it away. I play h3, he plays f5, and now a huge mistake would be to take this pawn. Technically it's still a one endgame because I have two passed pawns, and maybe I could avoid checks, but in principle this would be a mistake. So let me just show this. So if I would take this pawn, then this is the typical Desperado Rook position. Now he can just check me, and for example, if I move, he can check me. I cannot take because it's a stalemate, so I have to, I don't know, move, check, and he can just go on forever by checking me. Like I said, technically it could be won because I could maybe bring my king to the somewhere here, and I'll avoid this perpetual check. But in principle, this is the Desperado Rook motif. So I cannot I don't want to take this pawn. In fact, this pawn is very useful because he cannot move his rook with check. So this pawn is guarding my king. So I played h2. And now this is the position which I think if I came across this position in the book, I would have to think that it was somehow composed. It's very hard to believe that this kind of position can actually occur in the real game, because it has so many motifs. So the first motive is this Desperado Rook. The second motive is this pawn which serves as a shield. So the opponent's pawn which shields my king, so he cannot move the rook with check. What are the other motives? Two passed pawns. This stalemate position in the corner with the king. Also, this pawn promotes with a check, so this is very convenient. So many motives here. So I have to be now very careful how to win this, if this can even be won. And you can see that I'm at this point very low on time, so I have 1 minute. So I do play with increment, but well, it's a very complex position. So how to win this? I cannot win this if this was not a stalemate position. I could just play something like rook to b1, and if he takes the pawn, I can promote with check. But I cannot do this because he has this Desperado Rook. Okay, so it's white's move here, and he cannot, like I said, he cannot check, so he has to think of some other forcing move to force me to take the rook. And he played rook b1. Now I cannot take the rook. If I take the rook, it will be stalemate. If I take with this pawn, it will again be stalemate. So there is an elegant solution to this problem, and this is the combination I found. So I first play h1, promoting to a queen with a check. So this is very important. If this wasn't a check, then I would just lose my rook. And you can see that I'm very low on time. So I like 20 seconds. It's not an easy position. So he now takes my queen, of course, and I play rook b1. You can see that I am 12 seconds, so I was 2 seconds. I had only 2 seconds at one point because I have a 10-second increment. So rook b1, and he takes my rook. And now if I take his rook and promote either to the queen or the rook, then it will be a stalemate. But luckily for me, I can promote to bishop, and then I have light square bishop, which can block his promotion, and then I can win just by pushing this pawn. So this is this very interesting situation. So not just Desperado Rook, which is not so often seen, but also under promotion. And this is also the first time I played many games online, and this is the first time I under promoted in this kind of situation. So sometimes I under promote in blitz when I have a winning position, and then I take rook instead of queen because I don't want to think about stalemate possibilities. So it's easier to checkmate with rook without being afraid of checkmate. So I sometimes under promote to rook, but I never encountered this situation in which I must under promote in order to win. And this is the first time. So I played I don't know, maybe 6,000 games or online or something, and this is the first time I had that the under promotion was the only winning move. So I under promoted to a bishop, and now it's not a stalemate anymore because he can move his king. So he played king b8, and I played bishop e4. So now he cannot promote, and his king is far away, and I can just promote my pawn. So he played king c7, I took the pawn now, king d6, king g4, so it's just a promotion, king e5, attacking my bishop, f5, pushing my pawn, also protecting my bishop here, king d4, and now I'm just retreating my bishop here, and now he cannot promote, this is locked here on the queen side, and I have just easy win here. So it's just a familiar technique to promote the pawn. And now at this point he resigned because now I have everything covered for the promotion. Okay, so this is it for the game. I wanted to share this with you because this is not the endgame you see very often, in which you have both Desperado Rook and under promotion as the only winning move. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It was very exciting for me to play the game and to analyze the game, and well, this is something I wanted to share with you as well. Thank you very much for watching. If you like the video, please click the like button, subscribe to my channel, share the video, put the comment below, and whatever you want. See you very soon. Cheers.